For years, when people talked about Manchester City under Pep Guardiola, the conversation always circled back to their midfield. It wasn't just good. It was the beating heart of the best team in Europe. Rodri holding everything together. Kevin De Bruyne breaking defenses apart with passes no one else could even see. And İlkay Gündoğan, the steady hand who always turned up when the pressure was at its highest. That trio gave City balance, leadership, and control. They were the reason City could dominate games, suffocate opponents, and make the extraordinary feel ordinary. But this season, things look very different, and for the first time in years, the midfield might not be City's strength. It could be their biggest weakness. Let's start with what they've lost. Kevin De Bruyne has finally left the Etihad after almost a decade of brilliance. He's joined Napoli, and with him goes the Premier League's most creative midfielder of the last 10 years. His ability to create chances out of nothing made City unstoppable, especially in tight games where they needed a single moment of genius. İlkay Gündoğan is gone too, returning to Turkey with Galatasaray. People often forget just how important he was to Pep's system. He didn't always grab headlines, but he scored vital goals, dictated tempo, and provided calm leadership when others froze. And then there's Rodri, the man who many would argue is the single most important player in City's entire squad. He missed almost all of last season with a serious ACL injury, but after such a long layoff, no one really knows if he'll return as the same dominant force. That's two legends gone, and one cornerstone who isn't yet at 100%. That's not just a midfield reshuffle, that's a transformation. Of course, City didn't stand still. They spent big. Tijjani Reijnders arrived from AC Milan for nearly £50 million. A dynamic runner, comfortable carrying the ball forward, pressing aggressively, and even chipping in with goals. He made a dream start, scoring and assisting on his debut. Then came Rayan Cherki, the wonder kid from Lyon. Creative, unpredictable, capable of drifting between midfield and attack. Pep gave him the iconic number 10 shirt, and in true storybook fashion, he scored on his Premier League debut. And he also signed Nico González from Porto, a young Spaniard who was supposed to provide depth behind Rodri. Strong, disciplined, and already showing signs of being a future pivot. On paper, this looks exciting. Reijnders for dynamism, Cherki for creativity, Nico for defensive cover. A fresh, modern rebuild for a team that refuses to stand still. But paper isn't the pitch. And when you look closer, the cracks begin to show. Here's the first issue: balance. Rodri has been City's shield for years. When he's missing, City don't just lose a midfielder, they lose their safety net. He stops counterattacks before they begin. He gives the defense breathing room. He lets the fullbacks push higher. Reijnders is talented, but he isn't Rodri. He's more of a box-to-box engine than a disciplined sitter. He wants to run, to press, to surge forward. That's great in some games, but in the Champions League, away to Bayern Munich or Real Madrid, that kind of risk can get you punished. Cherki brings flair, but flair comes with inconsistency. He can beat two players with a dribble, then lose the ball cheaply. At Lyon, he was given freedom. At City, every mistake is magnified. Bernardo Silva remains one of the most versatile players in Europe. He can dribble, he can control the game, but asking him to be both the creator and the stabilizer at the same time is too much. He needs a Rodri behind him. He needs a De Bruyne beside him. Without that balance, City risks becoming a midfield of individuals rather than a collective machine. The second issue, leadership. When things got tough in past seasons, City could always rely on Gündoğan or De Bruyne to steady the ship. They knew when to slow the tempo, when to take responsibility, when to grab a game by the scruff of the neck. Now, that responsibility falls to Bernardo, to Foden, maybe even to Reijnders. All brilliant players, but none proven leaders at the very highest level. At least, not yet. We've already seen it this season. Against weaker opponents, City still look like City. Possession-heavy, creative, suffocating. But against teams with strong midfields, Arsenal, Liverpool, even Atletico Madrid in Europe, they look more vulnerable. The press isn't as coordinated, the transitions aren't as smooth, and when things start going wrong, there isn't always a calming presence to fix it. The third issue, identity. Pep Guardiola has always built his teams on midfield dominance. From Barcelona with Xavi and Iniesta, to Bayern with Thiago and Lahm, to City with De Bruyne and Rodri. Control the midfield, control the game. But this season, the midfield feels less about control and more about chaos. Reijnders runs forward, Cherki drifts inside, Bernardo roams everywhere. Even Phil Foden, now trusted more centrally, is at his best when improvising rather than dictating. It's exciting, it's unpredictable, it's fun to watch. But is it reliable? Can City grind out results in tough away matches with this setup? Or will the midfield's lack of structure finally come back to bite them? Now, to be fair, it's not all doom and gloom. If Rodri returns to full strength, he solves half these problems on his own. He brings stability, defensive cover, and passing range that no one else in the squad can replicate. If Reijnders adapts quickly, he could become the perfect engine to support Rodri. If Cherki matures faster than expected, he could give City a new creative spark that even De Bruyne didn't provide. And with Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, and Matheus Nunes adding depth, Pep still has more options than most managers could dream of. But until those pieces click, this isn't the flawless City midfield we've grown used to. It's a work in progress, a midfield in transition, and for a club chasing the Premier League, the Champions League, and everything else, that's a dangerous gamble. So where does this leave Manchester City? They're still good enough to beat most teams in England. Their squad is too deep, their manager too clever, their attack too lethal. But against the very best, against the Arsenals, the Liverpools, the Real Madrids of the world, this midfield might finally be the part of City that cracks, the part that turns dominance into doubt. So I'll ask you this. Is Manchester City's midfield still strong enough to carry them to another title? Or is this the season where their greatest strength quietly becomes their biggest weakness? Let me know what you think in the comments.